Yes, good afternoon. Sorry, my Italian is very rusty and German is not running very well either, but I'm using English. First of all, thank you for the invitation to come over here and talk about the issue that I have been working for very long, which was the topic that Rocco and Gian already addressed very much, which is about the futures literacy. I will come with some experience and understanding of how to bring futures literacy into our education systems. Of course, my own education system is the third level education system, namely the university, but I have had this project with UNESCO to bring futures literacy in the secondary, so the primary schools and secondary schools and high schools, which I find is kind of a very, very important thing in our times. Where there is a lot of uncertainty, not only about what future will bring, but how these young people are themselves thinking about their position in the future. What do they really want out of their own life, which is the basic question. And you cannot take this out of the context of understanding what are the types of impacts and influences that are kind of coming to change our environment and our societies. Both of those things are so important. So, but I need to introduce myself a little bit more. So I'm a futurist. I've been working with the future studies for 25 years or more, and mostly with in academic projects and building our own educational system, but also working with a lot of other parties, companies, NGOs, governments, not only Finnish governments, but many other governments also. This thing about the UNESCO and my relationship to the UNESCO really started that if you look at particularly the globally, you can say that here, Alpine regions, they are marginal regions and they have a problem or a threat that they might marginalize more in the future. Well, if you extend that and look at the more globally, you see that there are lots of, I would say, increasing amount of those regions outside the centers, metropolis and the cities that particularly face the problem of how to devise the different kinds of the future, how to help to reorganize our thinking about where should we put our resources. And this is what I've been working with this UNESCO's chair. Just some word about, so that you understand the scope that we have been working with in our, what we call the Finland Futures Research Center, which is my institution. So there is, I would say, increasing demand that we have recognized not only in Finland, but more largely in Europe and in the world. So if I currently look at our project, we are really working in almost all continents on this earth. And particularly, we have been focusing on how to bring this futures approach concretely in the different educational systems. That has been really our sort of key focus. And I'm currently running this type of exercise, which is International Master Program for Future Studies. So we get annually a lot of requests, and we take something like 25 young people to go through the 2-year intensive master program of future studies. And we are one of those very few institutions, academic institutions that are actually doing that. So that is the point. But now I actually want to go to into a little bit describing what I think are the kind of key aspects that were already to some extent presented in the previous presentation. But why do we actually need this? And I think the most important thing is that in what type of the community you are talking about, it's so important in our times that there is a sense of direction. Instead, there is a sense of that, okay, we know where we are actually heading. We know where we are, what we are actually wanting to see in our environment. If we don't have that, if we leave that to others, in other words, that we leave it to the outside forces to define our own futures, we leave a lot of the potential freedom to someone else. And from that perspective, I think in the word of the founder of the center, our research center, is that we need to fight for the ignorance. That is really our mission, that we need to define what are the types of things that we really need to know about the future to build our anticipatory systems of the future. So that combined with the idea that we actually need alternatives. If we are just doing kind of working on with one future, and particularly if that future is just an extension more or less of the past, then again we are missing some of those elements that gonna change ourselves, our circumstances, and thereby changing also the opportunities and the threats we are facing. So change is something that we need to work on and identify what are those changes. And only then we can kind of be more clear-headed when we are thinking about on what type of the skills and competencies we need to build for the future. So basically it is the question of how we are using the future. Are we using the future in the rich way, or are we using the future in a narrow way? Or are we using simply the future in a non-aware way, so without being conscious how we are actually thinking about the future? So that is exactly the whole point of futures literacy, to make it more explicit and understandable on which premises we are building our understanding of the future, which we are using every moment. You know, psychologists say that every day we are making more or less 60,000 decisions. So each of those, maybe we cannot be very reflective on each of those decisions, but the biggest decisions we need to make, there we need really to be aware, particularly about the potential impact of our decisions. This is that we need to also to help young people to learn about that what are those potential impacts on each of the major decisions in their lives. And that constitutes the future literacy. And what do we need for that? Basically, there are sort of three key components as far as I understand it. The first component is this cognitive component. So how much do we know? How much do we know about the trends that are affecting us? How much do we know about the climate change? How much we know about the potentials of the new technologies in our lives and so forth? But it's a lot to do with actually framing our environment, framing also our capacities to act. Because there are lots of things that we cannot kind of work on, but those things that we can work and influence, we need to define that particular real. So there is a lot of cognitive competence to be built on, But this other part, which is emotional or motivational capacity, is also very important, because that's actually the type of the relationship that we as adults or as young people, we need to build on between ourselves and the future. So I think a lot of the suffering that we see among the young people today is that they don't know where they should be focusing in their lives, and we are not able to support them in the right way. And for that, we are in a way a new situation, because we have much more volatile world than the world that it was 20 or 30 years ago. Our labor markets, according to so many indicators, are changing much faster. So we need to be, again, much more aware of what are those changing requirements, if we talk about the labor market, that we should be kind of knowing when we are entering the as young people to the labor market. What are those kinds of capacities that we need to build? And for that, actually, we move into this what I call the active skills. And these active skills are the type of skills that are particularly pertinent for our future societies. They are as emerging competencies that we need because the world around is changing. What I mean by this? Well, if you think about, for instance, these planetary skills. So planetary living skills, by that, I mean the type of the capacity that we need to have to understand this much more complex interaction between ourselves and our environment, our physical environment. And maybe if we get more to know about this connection and connectivity that it has to the human being, that enables us for the new inspiration as to where should we focus in our own particular world. If I want to be an entrepreneur, where should I focus then? So these active skills mean that they are really the kind of skills that builds the capacity to act, not only capacity to know, but also the capacity to act. Complexity skills is what we say when we want to train young people to be more clear with their thinking in this complex and ever more complex world, where there are lots of impulses that come from different sources. We get more information, but how do we make sense of the information that we get, and be clear-minded in that mess of various informations? Creativity skills are the type of skills that we need to create to find new solutions to old and new problems. And as we know, a lot of the work that used to be manually done will be gone, particularly when the new technologies like artificial intelligence come in place, takes away actually lots of this repetitive work that used to be a great source for labor in the past, but not so much anymore in the future. And creativity skills are perhaps not those type of the skills that actually will be replaced by any kind of a robotization. On the contrary, we need more of those kind of skills in the future, because whatever the context is, whatever region we're talking about the dynamics of change which is increasing, and for which we need these creative skills to tackle and find the right answers in the changing world. Empathy skills are also something which has to do with the new phase of our world, which is basically more interactive globalization. So to understand how people in other parts of the world are really thinking and empathize that to the extent that also that we can find also new ideas. How can we flourish? How can we build something which is offering something interesting to them? So that whole thing kind of constitutes what I call the active skills, and together with these cognitive and emotional / motivational capacities builds the futures literacy, which is all about building not only the capacity to act, but being actually having this kind of proactive futures mindset. So being anticipatory in your way, how you deal with your life and your work, and look for the opportunities, as well as, of course, to build in resilience. So how do we then more concretely go on teaching futures literacy? So we have experiences that we have gathered in the last, let's say, 3-4 years, when we have had this project of bringing in futures literacy into secondary education systems. Most of our cases are from Finland, but there are others too. And if I look at as a case in point, Finnish education system, which we all know it's a very good system. It's highly praised in the world, one of the best systems in the education systems in the world, particularly if you look at the primary and secondary education. I see that there has been in the last 10 years built a lot of this capacity to understand what the future is bringing. So if I look just the study plans of national study plans, for instance, I can see that there has been a tremendous rise. I'm not so only saying that I've been pushing that. There are many others that have been doing that as well. But certainly I can see that this has been tremendous change in terms of how much futures is emphasized in a practical working programs and curricula of the schools. So basically what we do is that we suggest different approaches to these schools, how they can kind of integrate futures thinking into the curriculum. The first is that that could be brought as an approach in whatever topic vocational schools or other type of the schools are using. So to bring it there to kind of to enrich the topics or whatever topic it is, whether it's about the history, whether it's about the biology, whether it's about whatever topic. So that's what we have been doing. And then the other point, the other way of doing that is that we have been devising these whole courses for the schools as well. So having a course for a couple of months and having a different set of sessions in there is also the typical way. And then the third way is perhaps, and we have seen that some of the schools have been interested in doing that, to integrate futures thinking into everything that they have in the school. So to have that as a topic that is kind of a cross-cutting issue for the whole school. So every course in one way or another will take this approach, this futures approach, a part of their study plan. So those are the three sort of major alternatives that we have at hand. So what is then the question about the how? How do we actually teach that? The first is that, of course, we need to be kind of defining what are the key objectives. So the objectives that we want to achieve on the futures learning level. And as you can see from that list, there are a good number of different objectives that can be identified, from the more narrow to the more broader objectives. Often we ask if there is a course, and we ask after the course, okay, how did you feel about this course? We ask from the pupils, and you know, the most significant and interesting conclusion that comes out of there is that they start to feel more positive about the future. Unfortunately, I don't have this one picture where I'm showing that we often do in the beginning of these classes. We do this kind of a test where each of the pupils are saying one qualitative word about the future. And quite often, if you start that, you see that a lot of the things that comes to the minds of the pupil has to do with rather negative issues. It's uncertain, it's fearful, it's threatening, all those kinds of things. But then, after the course, you get very different kind of results. You start to see that, okay, the future comes into the kind of a control, and this feeling for the future is changing. And I would think that this is particularly important in the rural areas, in the marginalized areas, where there is a kind of an automatic response quite often that, okay, the future is somewhere else. We need to go out of here, move to the cities, to other regions, because there is no future here. So future is a very emotional thing. There is a lot of the information that comes either from elsewhere or from your own thinking is very emotional based. So we sort of have to deal and have to build this type of emotional intelligence into the dealing with the future. And that can only happen if we address the real issues, if we really start to talk about it and help the pupils to see what is their kind of a realm of or sphere of operations where they can do something about it, where I can be active, what is my point of intervention in a way. And of course the teaching methods, a lot of those methodologies, Rocco and Gian already went through those methodologies a lot, and there are much more in our toolbox. But I think they needs to be introduced in such a way that they are easy to use, easy to reuse, so that actually maybe the students and the pupils start to use them by themselves. So, and then of course, particularly if since we are moving into this world when we are using kind of a phenomenon-based learning, so that we take one topic and we start to address that, and thereby learn out of that topic something that actually connects many different disciplines. So getting out of this kind of a rigid discipline-based methodologies, then particularly it is important that you are able to build this perspective on the future. What does this phenomenon look like 10 years from here? How does the agriculture, if we are here in this region, where we're talking about the agriculture and when we're talking about the tourism as two kind of a main subjects, so how does the agriculture look like here in 10 years or 20 years from here? What do we actually want to have as tourist flows here in 10 years from here? What would be the situation? And And these type of the questions we can really build into our methodologies when we are kind of in our didactic tool set when we are dealing with these questions with the young people. So so these are just some of the examples I took from our courses that we have been building. This one's secondary school. They were particularly interested in building this as a course that was for all the pupils, kind of available, and they had a very, very nice way of going through they were sort of picking up themselves the topics that they were really interested in, and then they started to work on them. And a lot of that work happened through the kind of the series of workshops and series of visits that they went. And in the end, they built this kind of a final work, and we were sort of as experts, we were sort of screening them and giving them a recommendation what they should do next. Here is another example of another school that were doing this kind of an exploratory course, and again they did something that they went to the parliament. We have the committee for the future in our parliament in Finland, so they went there and spent a good amount of time with them and talked to them, and the parliamentarians responded to them. Okay, what do you think about the future? What do you think about what we should do as young people, and so forth? So there are a lot of opportunities when it comes to how to build these kind of a concrete courses for the future. But still, if I look at the globally, this is still very much in the beginning. So we have these kind of networks around the world, but there are not many countries that are really active on this. Maybe our advantage has been that we have had this strong emphasis on futures education for a long time in Finland. But I'm sure that these methods that we are addressing and using and approaches, they're gonna be deployed in a much wider sense in the school system, because simply I can already now see that how much concrete and practical positive results they are bringing, and the interest of the teachers on different levels are really huge. I get constantly invitation to talk about this more, so I really see that there is a huge need over there, and I wouldn't think that the situation is any less so here in these regions. But maybe the point is that there has been nobody going actually and offering these tools for the teachers. And just finally, just to reflect also the times that we are, where we are moving into using technology in a different way. We, for instance, have been building this mobile-based futures literacy learning. With particularly in mind that this can be used almost anywhere in the world, because we have now over 70% of the people all over the world that have the access and a connection to the mobile phones. So building kind of a capacity there to use the mobile phone, address some of the issues, build didactically in such a way that teachers can be using that, are the new ways how we can expand our resources, so to say. Just at the end, if you find this more interesting, I have published this book, Patterns of the Future, not so long time ago, where you get more understanding of how I see the potential of bringing this awareness and consciousness about the future. So if any of you are interested, you can find it in Amazon or in any other sort of a more globally distributed bookshops. So thank you very much for attenzione, and I finish here. Thank you very much.